Welcome to another episode on PVPN, the Palos Verdes Peninsula Network. I am your local realtor and host, Joe Alessi, and I am ecstatic today. We have 4 women coaches from Palos Verdes and Peninsula High School, the song and cheerleader teams. On my right, we have the Penn High Song and Cheer. We have Loretta and Kim. And then on my left, we have from PV, Bria and Jama. And I want to start off, first of all, by saying thank you for coming. But we have a wealth of experience here. Together, not to just bring age, but we have 84 years of coaching experience here today.
Almost one.
Okay. And 41 of those years is at the PV and Penn High School. So it's a phenomenal group of people here. What I'd love to do to start off is, just for most of us who don't really know cheer and song well, tell us the difference between song and cheer for the people that don't really understand the process.
Okay, I'll go. For cheer, the cheer side of things, we stunt and we tumble, although song does tumble too now. And I would say the majority of the difference is the stunting component. Otherwise, we know the same cheers, we do the same band dances, we will do separate sideline dances and halftime performances.
And stunting is?
Stunting is when we're building pyramids or single stunts. Okay. Girls are flying in the air, they're climbing on top of each other and being supported by one another.
Cheer.
Cheer. Yes.
And then for song, like she said, there's a slight difference. Main difference is that they stunt and we don't. But we also incorporate dance. So dance is an art form. So for us, we incorporate that artistic side into our dances. So yes, cheer does dance, but we also do different genres. And mainly it's pom, jazz, and hip hop. But most of our girls do like dance outside or have had experience outside at studios in which they've learned ballet, foundation, and then lyrical, contemporary, modern, and stuff like that. So there's a good blend, which sometimes some of the cheer girls may have had familiarity with it, but they weren't trained in it.
Yeah,
so.
They don't have necessarily the technique that song is looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I think we really want to point out is that this is a sport, right?
Yes.
This is these are athletes. These are not maybe what the stereotype may be thought of from the past, where it was the homecoming king was the football player, the homecoming queen was the cheerleader, right? It's more involved than that, right?
Yeah.
So I would really like to get into that, because just want people to understand, how dedicated that girls have to be, as well as you guys will delve into being a coach. But so talk about, the conditioning and what their week is like, because this is Kim was saying, this is a year-round sport, pretty much.
Yes.
This is not, hey, you have a season and then you're off and you can go off and play a different sport. This is, you're cheerleading, you're there for the whole year and you're doing a lot of different things. So can you talk about your typical week? What kind of conditioning is involved for the girls and so forth?
Yeah. Well, starting in March, April, we have tryouts. So after that, we get started right away conditioning, learning choreography, and then we have summer practices. That's where they really condition. I have my girls run, they hate that part, but doing workouts and training on top of already dancing, that is conditioning in itself. They practice from morning until the afternoon in the summers, and then during school, they practice during the third period, and that's about a couple hours. They learn routines and they condition before practice as well, even during the school year. And even at games, that is part of their conditioning because it's so demanding. They have to cheer the entire time and perform. So they also dance, like Loretta mentioned, outside of the school. So some of them are really dancing at their studios and conditioning on top of at-school practices.
And you guys at P, I think they have a gym that they could go into, I believe, but you do not. Or I mean, you have a gym, but do you utilize it? Do you?
We dance in a dance room. Yeah.
But it's still pretty small. We do not. We're on the grass.
Yeah. So weather obviously is a factor with you getting your time in. And,
yeah.
Okay. And then what about like injuries? Because, they're doing a lot of stuff out there, and I've witnessed before. I've been to some college games where there are gymnasts out there too, and they're doing certain things, and I've seen girls have some really bad falls. So You're dealing with a lot of injuries throughout the year too, just like any sport might.
Yes.
You are.
Yes is the answer.
And so,
Cheer tends to have a little bit more than the song girls, but for us, it's like a sprained ankle or they tweak something or whatnot, and we let them take it easy. To me, I just tell them to advocate for themselves. If they are feeling, I guess for me, it's more of the heat stroke kind of thing because of our games are during the daytime because we have no lights. Right. So sometimes it does get really hot for them. And like Bria was mentioning, they're out there in the sun and they're going full out and they're facing the sun oftentimes when they're cheering to the crowd. So they get a lot of that heat. So for me, it's usually the girls that are like having symptoms of like feeling a little nauseous and stuff. We do tell them to take care of themselves during game, like leading up to game day, hydrate themselves, eat a healthy breakfast and lunch, not just to go through the day without eating anything and then arrive and wait for halftime to have their meal, like actually eat something beforehand, but making sure that it's something that will settle in their stomach. So we do touch upon nutrition too. It's not always just about because this is their tool. That's what I tell my dancers. Like your body is your tool. That you don't play with a helmet and pads and have a ball or anything. Like this is it. So if something breaks down here, then you can't perform. You can't be a part of it because you have to sit down and rest yourself because you're not 100% in your body and your health. Then you can't be 100% when you're performing out there.
Yeah, I think that's a huge difference from, again, when we were kids versus today too. And social media, I think, has a big factor in that where you could look on social media and see nutritional stuff. You can even see stuff about how you can exercise and do things for your body. So I think people in general, younger kids, are taking better care of themselves than we may have.
It's our job just to remind them and make sure that they're on the right path because you can tell when someone comes with low energy. Maybe they're not hydrating, they're not getting electrolytes, they're not eating right, like Loretta said. Yeah. So you just have to be very observant as a coach and paying attention to each one of your team members every day. But yes, we do tend to get a few extra injuries, only that we are doing a different skill with stunting. So there's bumps and bruises, which are pretty much a regular thing. And then the occasional, maybe bent back finger that gets broken, or I just had a girl the other day and literally she was doing nothing but walking into a formation and just like got her shoe caught on the track and twisted her knee, So it can be that simple, or it could also be that we're trying a new stunt. I tell parents anytime we're working on something new, there's always that opportunity for injury, but we work really hard at being safe. And we talk about it all the time. You have to be focused at your practice. You have to be focused at games so that you are taking care of each other and staying safe and injury-free. Yeah.
Good.
And I think at both schools, too, we have excellent trainers. Yeah. So, they help out a lot. So, especially for us, our trainer, Scott, he's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's always there. And if the girls have injuries, he just ends up oh, you deal with it.
No.
He takes the time and pays attention to the girls, too. And values them as athletes, and I really appreciate that. So good job, Scott.
Yeah.
And we all do concussion training too. So every child is screened with the concussion training prior to starting our schedule in the fall. We have that data on file, and then if something happens, they're tested again. So same thing, we have fantastic trainers, and safety is our priority.
Yeah.
So
good.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, so the difference between, this is a sport, but one of the differences from my vantage point is, say for football or baseball or basketball, you have an opponent that you have to say, okay, gosh, these people are doing this, we're going to watch game film, and we now have to make these changes. Unless you're in a competition where you think maybe a certain school is doing something, you maybe have to change your routine for that factor. Outside of that, it's more just within yourselves. It's your own nucleus that you guys live in. So talk about when you go into the year, I'm sure, we talked about, Loretta mentioned tradition. So I'm sure there are, again, for people that don't know, there are probably some cheers that every girl has to know, right?
Yes.
And tell us about those, like how many there are, maybe tell us one or two about them. And then outside of that, how often are you changing your routines throughout the year? Do you start off the year with a certain amount and then you just improve on them throughout the year, or do you every month you bring in something new? Talk about your routines and how you
Yeah, you can start.
bring that into
So a lot of our cheers are the same for PV and Peninsula, because when we reopened in 2002, half of the girls that came over to cheer were Penn cheerleaders, so we have the same cheers. They're Pop Warner cheers. They're cheers that have been passed down. They're cheers that I was probably doing in high school in Kansas. So cheers don't change that often. There's only so many ways that you can spell out, go Sea Kings. The routines, I feel like cheer has been a very traditions-based program at PV High. I've been there 16 years. There have been dances that we've been doing for 10, 12 years, and my varsity especially, and I think your varsity too, looks forward to doing those routines that are varsity routines. And there'll be times where I'm like, we can't still keep doing this dance, can we? And they're like, no, that's the one we really want to learn. I'm like, okay, year 14, here we go, we're still doing it. But they really do look forward to learning those routines that we've had for years, and then we incorporate new ones as we go. We both go to camp in the summer. We go to camp together. We learn new routines there that we bring back and put in the rotation. But I think
you as coaches are going to learn these,
and the
then
girls.
you-
we take the team.
and the girls.
We take the
Okay,
team.
okay.
But the girls also create their own sidelines and dances, and their goal is to create something that is long lasting. Like my captains did a captain's routine last week, and they're like, "Cans, do you think this is going to be a survivor?" And I'm like, "Yes, I think this is going to be one that we do for the next 10 years." So that's what drives them. It's not competing with anybody else. It's competing with themselves to better our program and make it long lasting. So.
Yeah, I would also say to add, within our teams, there are injuries, like you mentioned, and sometimes girls get sick. So you have something planned, but maybe last minute you have to change formations or change your stunt group. Yeah. So that's the change within that we have to be ready for. Yeah. Anything may come up.
And the girls have to be adaptable, and we teach them how to be flexible and adaptable and be ready for those situations, because it does happen.
Yeah.
And do you have captains? Are there captains of the squads?
Yes, of course.
How many per squad do you tend to have captain-wise?
For my team, I have 3.
3 captains.
Yeah, and it's just kind of worked its way in that fashion. I kind of tend to have smaller teams at Penn for whatever reason. And so at the beginning when it was like 12 to 13, I had 2. And then the last few years I've had, I think the biggest team that I had was 21. So when it was the larger, I was like, okay, let's do 3. And I think 3 for me tends to be a little bit easier because if one is out, I still have 2. If all 3 of them there, it's great because then I put them in 3 different groups and it like works out. So then it's smaller. But if one's out or sick or whatever, I usually have 2. And there had been times where like when I had 2, both of them were out. One activity, one was sick, and I'm like, okay, like here we go, So I think it usually helps me to have at least 1 at all times.
And
so
do the captains, are those people that you tend to choose, or the girls choose them themselves?
Actually, I have a process. They go through an audition process. So for our program, they do. They have to submit a report or like a essay to me of why they want to be captain or why they feel they're good for that position. And then I have them choreograph a routine because as captains, we do give them choreography opportunities to teach their team members. So they have to come up with a minute routine. They have to perform it by themselves in front of the other girls. And then they have to teach it. So I can see their teaching skills and how they will be when I'm not there. And I ask them to do something. So I want to see them kind of in action. And then from there, I do ask the girls to vote. So I'll just tell them to give me their thoughts on their process, and then I'll take it into account, but I tell them I have the final say. And then I kind of do a little interview with them. But by the time they're in that, I've kind of known them already.
Right.
So, but I do want to see how they speak, because if they do, get a chance to do an interview or something like that, I want to make sure they are able to handle that as well, since they are my leaders of
they
team.
represent.
Yeah. And then for the flaggies, we only have 7, so there's only 2 captains for that one because it's smaller.
That's pretty involved. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Same with you, same
what
kind of
we
process.
do is very similar to what Loretta does. I have 4 captains, And you get to know these girls over the years, so you know who's going to be capable in that position, and you kind of have an idea, but giving that opportunity for the rest of the team to have a say in who is going to be their leader, who's going to be there for them, who they can rely on, and who they respect and want to be their leader. So the voting, that's where the voting part comes in. And then, of course, teaching a routine, being able to get up in front of their peers, knowing all the components of cheer and what goes on, and being able to communicate with me and be that person that I can talk with. They can take that information back to their team, so it's super important. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the tryout process, and even though you have a lot of girls on the team, you're turning away a lot of girls, right? I mean, there's still a lot of people who would love to be in the programs, is my understanding. So talk a little bit about, for the football as an example, the Pop Warner system is a pretty good farm for kids, right? But it's dwindling. And I don't know if the football players dwindling means that are there less cheerleaders too as well? Or are you still finding that they're cheering from really young ages still, or are they like getting into high school and deciding I want to be a cheerleader and then going for it? Just talk about how that has changed a little bit.
I think the numbers have been down for the last couple of years, but they're rebounding right now. And I don't know if COVID played any role with that or not, but I think the Pop Warner teams that are the middle school, the 8th graders, 7th graders, 6th graders, all have really large teams this year, and they've been larger this year than they were the last 5 years. So that's good. I do agree with the Pop Warner football numbers. Like, we've got a lot of flag, but not a lot of tackle. So that is concerning about like where the nature of the programs are going to go. We got to get more kids playing football, and then more kids will want to cheer for them.
And the girls are there for when my boys went through the Pop Warner system, and
with mine
played with her son, one of my sons. It seemed like a lot of the girls at that age, they had to go through this really strict, how their hair looked and how their, is that still what happens at that level, and why does that happen at that level? And is that something that you also do at your level, or do they have to have a certain look that they have to,
I feel like for dance, for cheer too, it's the nature of the sport. It's active, and you want hair pulled back, for example, because it could get in the way, it could get pulled on or caught onto something. No jewelry, and everyone should be uniform, so we all look like one cohesive team. So it's for safety reasons too.
Safety. I mean, with stunting, with cheer, I want them to have short nails, and I know that they start that with Pop Warner because my best friend had a situation where a stunt went wrong and the nail got in the eye. I've also had a girl who caught a cradle and ripped off a nail, nail bed and everything. So it is safety based more than just an aesthetic. This is what we want it to look like. It's more safety reasons.
Yeah, the nails can do a lot of damage.
And
that can damage you. If you've got an acrylic nail and it's caught, it's going to take off the nail that's under it too. So it's super important. No nails.
I'm Joe Alessi. I am a broker associate with RE/MAX Estate Properties. So the beauty of our industry is consumers have choices all over the place. What they don't know when it comes to real estate is what to really look for. So things that they should think about is looking for someone that will do the little things. I will lose a deal before I allow someone to do something that's not going to benefit them. I've been with RE/MAX Estate Properties about 11 years now. The clientele I work with can be very vast, from someone buying their first home, of course, to someone upsizing their home. Could be a lot of different things that they're looking for. A lot of people love to say they go the extra mile. You'll hear that all the time. I am not afraid to get my hands dirty around the house. And under the house, go into an electrical panel myself, or climb on somebody's roof. It could be anywhere. I tend to become friends with many of the people I work with. This is not a one and done type of business. This is a lifelong relationship once it starts. Well, this might be a good time too. As everything evolves, right, in our world in general, we talked a little bit about this with guys. I mean, you have all women, all girls on your teams, and I know you, as we've talked about it, you'd love to have guys in there for different reasons. And I know at the college level,
Yeah.
you see a lot of guys on the college level.
I had a guy partner.
Yeah.
For 4 years.
It's definitely, so maybe you can make a pitch to all the high school guys out
Come
there.
on out for cheer.
Yeah, because I think it would allow you to maybe do some different stunts.
Yes.
Right? That
Yeah.
open that up a little bit.
Even for dance, guys can come out.
Yeah.
I mean, more and more you see that in the professional world too, that there's male cheerleaders that are dancing, like for Rams and Chargers. So
Yeah.
why not start now?
And we do have a Clipper girl on my right and a Laker girl on my left. So we do have that. So that's exciting
Yeah.
too. I know that you guys. So let's talk about that a little bit. How many of your girls are having aspirations to go on to college, to cheer in college, and how often are they getting any kind of scholarships? Are they, talk about that and what they need to do to get there, and how you guys as coaches help in that process if you do.
Yeah.
So I can tell you how I help in that process. I call coaches. I've actually, when the girls have expressed interest, there's a school they want to go to. I've helped them get their videos ready to send in if they're going to send it in via video. But I actually call the coach and speak to the coach, because I think sometimes the idea is if you don't do an all-star program, that there's no way that you could possibly cheer in college, and that's not true. In fact, I remember when one of the girls was looking at Michigan and I spoke to the coach, they were like, we love having high school cheerleaders because we know that they are in this for the sole purpose of really pumping up school spirit, and that's what he was looking for. So I think that's probably the best thing that you can do, is help them prepare not only athletically, but then selling them to the actual coaches. Like, this is a kid you're going to want on your program because they've worked really hard for me.
And are there scholarships available?
There are, and becoming more and more prevalent. I mean, I think probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, scholarships weren't really a thing for cheer. You might get books, but now there are definitely scholarships that can be had. Anybody can cheer, it just depends on what level you want to cheer at.
Right.
Yeah. I would say, I would agree with Jama. Same thing, calling coaches, reaching out to them via email, working with your athlete, and knowing if that program is going to be the right fit for your athlete, because all programs are different level of maybe experience and skill. So doing your own homework on that school and then working with that athlete to make sure that they do have the right fit. I had a scholarship for cheer back in the day, and that was really back in the day. So, and they do exist. You also have to ask about them. Yeah. They're not necessarily readily spoken about, but if you do your homework and you reach out and you look and find them, they are there.
Yeah, it's not like football where there are scouts that are coming and
They're
looking,
gonna come to you,
see how they're, right? It's
You
more.
have to do the homework.
Generally, no. And also on Jama's point about high school cheer, everyone does think that you have to do all-stars to get that scholarship or to get that position on a team. And that's 100% not true. I've got 4 that are cheering college right now.
Great.
Yeah, so super excited.
I think for the dance side of it, I mean, it depends on what they want to do. Like, if they want, a lot of times they have like a dance team in the college level, and a lot of them compete. And I don't think they necessarily do sideline stuff as much. I mean, you have the USC song leaders are very traditional, and then they work with their band team. But there's some schools that their dance team is a competitive team.
Right.
And I think for me, the way that I help them out is because I've had that experience of auditioning for a pro team. I incorporate that into my class. So when they learn a new routine, I actually have my girls, they kind of mini audition for their spot in the routine. So when I first got to Peninsula, it was very seniority based, where the seniors were like, well, the seniors always have to be in front, like in every formation. And I'm like, No, like that's not what's going to happen anymore. Like you have to earn your spot. And sometimes girls are great at hip hop and maybe they struggle with pom, or they're great at pom and maybe they struggle a little bit with hip hop. So I like to move them around because I'm like, you can't get comfortable. Everyone can see you. You're in a grand floor. Like people are up. Like if you're in the back, you're seen. You can't hide behind people, and I don't want you to. So I have them audition. So I'll put them out like, okay, you four, you're going, and then they'll go and they'll audition for their spot, and then I'll place them from that. And that's kind of what they do in the audition process. In any audition process, they have to go in small groups and have to be able to work on the fly and be prepared for that and not be nervous and scared because they've always been in large groups all the time or have already had their spot already and didn't have to do that. So they do that pretty much for each routine that we do. And we change up the styles for them so they don't get used to one particular thing. And musicality, I think, plays a big part nowadays. It's not just single counts. So musicality and really listening to your music. So after every routine, we'll videotape it, we'll send it to the team, and I'll tell them to watch themselves first, then watch the entire team, like we do film. Like football players.
We do that too.
We definitely do film, and the girls will watch it. And even after practice, we'll do it if we change formations or whatever. I'll send it to them, and if I don't send it right away, they're like, "Can someone send the video?" And I'm like, "I just got to my car."
And then I show them how to
Give me a moment.
zoom in on you and see what you're doing.
So we kind of do film, and they watch themselves because they want to improve and they want to get better. And then I also tell them, the performing aspect is fun. Like that's the icing on the cake for song leaders. I go, but the sideline is where it's at. Like that's why you sign up for a song and cheer, or else you just go to a regular dance team and they just perform, right? Yeah. But on the sideline, being a part of the game is why these girls do it.
Yeah, it's
and
that
so
energy, it's that thrill.
I tell, they have to improv. They have to look like they're excited on the sideline.
All the time.
It's not just like, I know. Calm and then like walk around and like, oh my gosh, I did so bad. I'm like, girls, like, we are professional. Like we go to your ladders, stand up there, keep your comments to yourself, until the end when no one's around. And that's all preparing them for that next level if they decide to do college or if they decide to do pro teams, because when you are representing a company that makes a lot of money, like you have to play that part. Because everyone's watching you all the time. And so they have to, we really ingrain that in them from the start.
Showing them how to put their best self out there every time.
Yeah, and the interaction with the fans is huge, right? And that's one thing we never, when I was a kid, the fans, we were just there cheering, but now you've got Red Tide, you have the zoo, they have their own chants and things that they do. And I know that you play off one another, which is a ton of fun for everybody, even for the parents to watch, and I'm sure the other side hates it, because they're saying certain things, so the visiting team, probably, has their take on it, but it's a lot of fun. We talked about competition. Are there any banners, CAF championships for either of the schools?
No.
That's relatively
not
new,
yet.
though.
Yeah.
So that's a new
We're
thing?
doing
Last couple
CIF
years.
this year.
Right.
No.
CAF has been I think only about 3 to 4 years.
Oh, so that
it's very new.
it's very new.
Yeah.
And it's
I didn't know
separate
that.
than what we do.
Right.
It's a totally different team. So you can compete for CIF or cheer, but it's not the same as what we're doing sideline cheer. So if Kim's going to do that, that's a totally different team than what we do on Friday
And
night.
I explained that to you, remember?
Yeah.
That
So
we're traditional competitive.
Right.
So I do a tryout for my traditional.
Yeah.
And then I do a separate tryout for the competitive. And you hope that most of your traditional girls will want to be a part of that. But you also can get girls that didn't want to do sideline cheer, but are really interested in that competitive component.
Right.
And so they'll jump in on that.
Yeah. Will you have dance gravitate to that, or does dance also have a CIF element?
So to give you a little history, CIF is actually the athletic governing board, and they recognize cheer as a sport. Okay, so Bria and I are song teams, and we're song leaders, which is that blend of cheer and dance. Well, because of that blend, dance is subjective. Like you can't really you can give points, but it's judges that are evaluating a routine based on their past experiences, based on what they're looking for. So if I was a judge, my past experience, it has to do with pro teams and all of that stuff. And if I'm sitting next to another dance judge, she may have been a ballerina when she was little. So when she's watching a routine, she's looking at the technique. Are they up on their releve? Is it placed? All of that stuff. Whereas when I'm looking at the energy. Like, are they giving me energy? You know. So us as judges have a different subjective view. When Kim will compete in the CIF division, there are certain points that they get for executing their stunts.
Right.
And
there are
that's,
skills that
have to
be done.
So that is a little less subjective than what we would do if we compete. So in that regards, it's just harder for CIF to really like govern
Regulate.
who's going to win,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So for us, if we were to go to competitions, whether it's USA or UDA or whatnot, you could still be evaluated. They still give you placements. Judges do score you, but there is a larger subjective component to it than just like a regular game where football, they score,
Right.
it's easy, you get 6 points.
Yeah.
You know, for us, it's a little bit, there's more of a gray area for us.
Yeah.
And this takes place in January, this competition?
CIF does this year.
And
yeah.
where do they do it? Where do they hold it?
Ours has moved around a couple times because of COVID, but I believe it's going to be in Orange County.
Okay, like at a sports arena or a
Oh,
high
sometimes
school?
it's at
or...
a school, sometimes it's at a college, you know, anywhere where there's space.
Right.
Yeah.
And for the song component, the season starts in December and goes into January. And the national competition is usually in February or late January, early February.
And the ones we'll do will be in February also.
And then there's one, there's so many companies, so it depends on which company you do. So for USA, is a varsity brand company. They have a big base in the West Coast. So theirs is in Anaheim, usually around January or March.
Okay.
But a lot of teams that competing is their main, like a big focus for them, they will then travel to Florida. So a lot of them are now going to Florida for the UDA. And that's what you see on ESPN. That, you know,
Right.
the collegiate one in Florida, they have a high school one in Florida that you can compete. But those ones, they like legit like come in 6 a.m. in the morning before school starts.
Yeah.
Because they need the gym time.
Yeah.
Like they are all about it. So we're just dabbling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like them to go see the different teams and like be inspired. That's
Right.
why I like competition.
And there's
is the
high
inspiration.
schools that compete and then they forgo going to games, you know, so they take that time
Right.
to practice for competition, and we don't do that. You know, our number one priority is cheering for our teams
Great.
at our school.
Love that. Let's touch on what it's like to be a coach. And obviously, as we said, we've got 84 years of coaching here, 41 at the local school. So, you know, for someone that wants to be a coach, how do they break into it? What do they have? What skill set do they have to have? Just talk about being a coach, what you really enjoy about it.
Okay.
Some of the and some of the challenges too, because it's
From my experience, being a coach is great. I mean, I love working with the girls and getting to know them each year and watching them grow and mature throughout the years as dancers and as women and young ladies. The challenges are self-esteem is a big one, like just constantly reassuring them and building their self-esteem, because dance can be very critical, so I'm still critiquing them, and I'm like, you can't take it personal. You just want that to motivate you. And if I'm picking on you a lot or correcting you, to point your toe or to work on your turns, it's only to make you better. So just reassuring them, and most of them know, they come from dance studios, and it's dance culture to get critiqued by your peers and your instructors. So they know to have that thick skin, but sometimes it gets to them. They're harder on themselves. They're already involved in so much throughout school, outside of school, and then on top of practices, they have to remember the routines, and they're hard on themselves. So you can see them starting to break down. So I think as a coach, you observe, and it's just you knowing your students and your dancers, your cheerleaders, and kind of just working with different personalities, approaching people in different ways. You just kind of learn as you go.
Yeah,
It
and
ebbs and
outside
flows.
outside of obviously having the experience of being in the system as a younger person, I mean, do you, at the college level, should you be taking certain courses? Is there a certain
I think
skill?
experience and skill set definitely helps, but I think if you work with kids and you know how to relate to them, you can coach. And if you know the background and the basics of everything you're coaching, you can be successful.
Yeah.
Coaching has changed a lot in the last, even since I came here. The race to get into college and the application process for college has completely changed what we go through during the fall, and what these kids can do and what they can give, because it has changed so much.
And I would think the mental health nowadays is a big topic.
Yes.
So you know,
100%.
as a coach, I would think that you would have to really hone your ability to see these things, what these
Yes.
athletes are going through,
Yeah.
right? Because they're, especially at the teenage level, right? There's a lot of hormones going on. There's a lot of things that they're all dealing with their student
Yeah.
friends and their family, and how they're coming into their own. So
Yeah.
you have to recognize these
Absolutely.
things, right?
Well, high school in itself is a roller coaster ride. I mean, one day you're up here, the next day you're feeling low. So this is where they're finding themselves, recognizing who they are, who they want to be around, what they want to do, and sort of picking and choosing for themselves. And sometimes that's hard because you also want to be a part of a group, or you want to be liked. So for us, it's really just about recognizing that and always talking about it. I think I probably talk more about life and what's going on with them, and just general things about being a young woman and growing and maturing, than I do about cheer. I think I spend a lot of time on that. And everything that we do in cheer and song with dance applies to life skills, applies to moving forward, whether they cheer or dance beyond this moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I always say to all of my kids, this is just high school cheer. And I'm not trying to minimize it. It is very important. It's been my life for years. But at the end of the day, it's who you are as people,
Yep.
How you treat others, your friendships that you make. Like, did you have a good experience on that? Like, of course, we all want routines to hit, skills to be met, have the crowd walk away and just be like, wow, that was amazing. Same way we want football to win every time. But at the end of the day, they're going to remember the bus rides. They're going to remember, oh, we had a really great time at that game, and it was so fun, and Red Tide was cheering, and the band was so loud, and like it's the overall experience. This is just high school cheer. That's it.
Yes.
It's supposed to be fun, and these are all kids, and I think at the end of the day, if we do our best and we put kids first in everything we do.
Enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do their best.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the beginning of September right now. The big game is at the end of October. I think it's October 28th, and it's at PV High this year. So is there anything that you do special with one another on that particular day, or is it same as every, you're on your side and you're on the other, and
Oh, I think
How does that-
for me and Bria, and I try to make it a point to, if we're at PV, to walk over and say hi to them, and do it in, not like, hey, on the 50-yard line, we're gonna like have this thing where we're meeting up, but just in like a casual manner, just so the girls know that it's okay to go say hi to their friends.
They're all
afterwards.
friends.
They're all friends.
They're all friends.
Yeah, and I always remind them too, like, it's fun to have a rivalry. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it takes an ugly turn when you get too like invested in the ugliness. So I always tell them, like, we are positive people.
Yeah.
Like,
We do the
we
same
are
thing.
going to keep it on the positive side, and even at the basketball games, because it's a more enclosed environment, I will go up to them and we're like, hey, how's it going? And
Yeah.
chit chat and talk, and I'm full out pen gear, and they're full out TV gear and stuff, and I give them hugs and stuff, because I want people to know, like, there's no animosity between us, because outside we'll hear the girls say, oh, on social media they're saying this, or these people they're saying this, and it usually always just like hearsay and stuff. And
Let it go.
So I'm
It's
like,
never true.
The parents and everybody on it just has to see that we get along, and I always tell them too, like, we always should support each other as women, because I think it's very important for them to know that they have to support each other.
Yes.
All of us need to be put in a great light and not be pitted against each other.
Yeah.
Because it just causes too too many bad, ugly things.
Yeah.
These kids have been
We
friends
should
all their
all-
lives.
yeah.
They've grown up together. They just are at different schools. And so
Yeah.
one game isn't going to make or shouldn't make or break that. With us, we've all known each other for years. I coached Kim's daughter.
Yes.
Like
My kids have grown up with all the kids
Yeah.
on their teams. I know all those girls since they were
Yeah.
little bitties.
Yeah.
Well, that is a really nice thing
one
about
game.
how the peninsula has evolved, because back in the day, there was 3 high schools, Merrill Est, Rolling Hills, and PV, and it was very segregated. Like if you went to play the other team or whatever, or if you went to a party on the weekend, it was like rivalry big time. Now, even with Little League back then, Little League, the only way you would play the other Little League was if you made the All-Star team. But now there's interleague play throughout the whole year. The kids get to know each other. It's great. And you've got a lot of other sports, like lacrosse. A lot of other sports are big where the kids know each other from a really young age. And even though they do go to the different high schools, the segregation that used to be around
isn't there.
there's always going to be something happening, but it's way better than it used to be. So it's nice to...
No,
Yeah.
I like it. I like that they all hang out. And a lot of them play outside sports together too.
Yeah.
Like that are not school sanctioned, but like club or travel. So yeah, it's so much fun.
Beautiful. Well, that was a great discussion. I thank you so much. And we talked about this. I'd love to end with a cheer. Okay, so don't make me look bad, but so we're gonna end with I want to go PVPN for the Palos Verdes Peninsula Network. So if we could do
We want the palms.
yeah, we need to get full force here. Give me something.
We're gonna
Share it.
I have another gold one.
Give me the one. I'll take the mic.
Oh, you're
Oh, yeah, I'll take
Oh, we
the
have
mic.
that one over there.
Okay,
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, we're good.
We're down a palm.
Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
just be here.
Ready?
Oh,
Give me a P.
P.
Give me a V.
V.
Give me a P.
P.
Give me an N.
N.
What does that spell?
PVPN.
Fight, fight, fight. Thank you.